What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be going over the B2B setter call framework. This is the exact framework that all of my sales teams are actually using and absolutely crushing it. The biggest thing that I want you guys to take away is this isn't a word for word script. This is essentially a framework for you guys to follow and a guide for you to follow, but I don't want you guys to be memorizing lines. Because if you've ever tried to memorize a script word for word, you know that the second a prospect says something unexpected, it completely breaks down. And the best sales reps, they have a framework, but they don't have a script for script type deal, because you want to be able, number one, to handle unexpected things. Number two, you also want to be able to actually be listening to the prospect. And you want to actually be actively listening, because if you're simply doing a word for word script, you take half the deal out with sales, which is actively listening and connecting with the prospect. It's really about just running a framework. You should understand why each question exists, what psychological purpose it actually serves, and then when to move deeper. Because really that's the difference between a robotic setter and a professional one. So the biggest thing with this is you got to think of this framework kind of like an iceberg. At the tip, it's very more surface level type things. And then when you go deeper, you're asking harder hitting questions. And that's exactly what we have today. As you can see, you have the intro, the frame, you're setting why you're calling, and then you have the system check. System check is very baseline things. You have the discovery. We're going to be talking about the tangible problem, getting the experience, the results check, and then the consequence and urgency, and then ultimately move into you transitioning to book a call. Very simple. So the discovery, this is where you go and really dig deeper into the frustrations. This ultimately is what makes the calls. But before you get into discovery, a lot of times you have to do the system check. And the system check is essential because this is the tip of the iceberg. This is not what's going to, absolutely sell a prospect, but these are going to be crucial information to know, like, what's the prospect doing right now, what the business is doing in terms of tools, the setup, and what they're currently using. And then once you have an understanding of there, then you can get into the discovery. And the deeper you go in discovery, the more buying energy and the more leverage that you create. Because people don't buy when they understand your product. They buy when they feel like the product actually solves their issues. You can really only get that by running a proper discovery. Now, the biggest thing is this is in order, because a lot of the system check stuff is a necessity, and you want to make sure you're uncovering all the details of what they're currently using, the prices of their current system. For example, if you're selling, software and this company is looking to switch over from their software to yours, you want to figure out, okay, what's the software that they're using? What does it do for them? What's the price? Why don't they like it? And then you start to go into the discovery, because if you completely skip this stuff, the discovery is not going to work. So that's essentially how it goes. But once you pass the system check and you start to get the prospect to talk about their pain points, you have momentum, right? Anytime a prospect starts to talk about their problems, you have a ton of momentum and leverage. And the last thing that you want to do is to go back into surface level things. So that's a complete, once a prospect starts to talk about how much they hate their software, and the problems that it's causing day to day in their business, and why it's ruining their job, and why this software is ultimately ruining their career. You don't want to go back into, oh yeah, man, like, what is it doing for you specifically? You don't want to go back to surface level things. You want to hammer home the emotional impact, and the problems that it's happening. So once you're in discovery, stay there and keep going deeper until you hit the real pain. Now, what I want to do is really just go through the full framework step by step, because this is going to show you exactly how we run it here. and I'll be able to break down an order so you can see not just what to say by what, but also why each part exists. So, starting off in the intro, this is where you're disarming and contextual. This is where a lot of people mess up because a lot of people will start pitching right in the intro, which is going to be extremely salesy. Right off the bat with this, you want to call you're just one of their friends. So it's like, hey, is this Mike? Hey, Mike, it's John. Or you could say, hey, Mike, it's just John. How you doing today? What that allows the prospect to do is they're like, oh, John, well, who is John? Maybe they're like, oh, hey, what's up, John? Or now they start to think, who is John? Instead of you saying, hey, Mike, it's John with this company. We do X, Y, and Z. We're the best software company in the game. This is just starting off conversational and starting off more friendly. Then once they answer, hey, John, I'm actually just calling from B2B SaaS. You actually filled out one of our forms and then you're going to talk about the pain that they mentioned in the lead form. So hopefully your marketing is doing a good job and asking what specific, problems they're having in their business, to where you can say, hey, John, I'm actually calling from B2B SaaS. You actually filled out one of our forms about fixing the inefficiencies with your marketing. Does that ring a bell? What that does is you're leading with a problem, not with a product. And then from there, you want to set the frame for a call. Cool. Look, this call is very simple. Just want to see what you're doing right now, what you're trying to improve. And if it makes sense, we'll schedule a walkthrough. Does that sound fair enough? And really what that does is it disarms them, clarifies the intent of the call, and then makes the call feel more consultative instead of a transaction. And then you're essentially just giving them the sounds fair enough, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, yeah, you sound very, neutral with this. So 9 times out of 10, prospect is going to say, yeah, for sure. That sounds good. And then you're into asking the specific questions. Now, the frame is very simple. You want to give context for why you're specifically calling. And then you want to get into asking questions. So it's like, hey, gotcha. Quick question. How are you handling insert core process right now? Do you have a system or is it mostly manual? So like I said, in this example, we're selling software. You can, kind of play around with whatever you're offering. But biggest thing is, if you get a prospect that's pushing back on you and they say, just tell me what you do, then you pivot with curiosity. So you want to follow Jordan Belfort's straight line method by holding your frame. For sure, I can definitely explain, but it is a little different for everyone. We do work with a lot of roofing companies. Most of us come to us because they're dealing with X, Y, and Z, trying to improve their marketing efficiencies. Just so I don't waste your time, what part of the process gives you the most headaches right now? So, you're essentially disarming the prospect, telling them you can explain, but it's more custom. Everything is different. You do work specifically in that niche. And then going back into the frame, which is the straight line method, which part of this process do you feel like is giving you the most headaches right now? The point is, you're not forcing the pitch, you're diagnosing before prescribing. Next, we're going to get into the system check, and you're still above water with this. This is more the surface of the iceberg. And this is where you're going to collect the actual facts before diving deep. So you're going to ask, just so I understand where you're at, what are you using day to day to manage all that? Is it, an internal tool, spreadsheets, or a different platform? And then from there, and how's that been working for you overall? So the purpose is to establish their baseline system, whatever they're using. Like I said, with this, it's tech and software. You want to see what their adoption level is and satisfaction. And then this sets up for the contract for your value hook a lot later. And then you can get into discovery from there. Okay. Now, once the system check is done, now you're going to get beneath the waterline. And this is where real conversations happen. So phase 1 of discovery is you want to get a tangible problem and actually identify the pain. So you want to narrow in on actually what hurts. A, out of curiosity, what's the biggest challenge for you in your key workflow? Is it visibility, speed, or communication? And then from there, say, you know, do issues ever pop up like delays, missed handoffs, or information falling through the cracks? And then from there, you want to continue to probe. Now, if a prospect says everything is fine, you want to say, hey, man, fair enough. I hear that a lot. And you want to get them to clarify. When you say things are going fine, do you mean in terms of organization, profitability, or overall workflow? And then from there, you want to probe into, got it? Anything that still feels frustrating or just not as efficient as you'd like? And the purpose with this is you want to move from more surface level calm to specific frustrations that they'll recognize emotionally, and then dive into discovery phase number 2. So, discovery phase number 2 is you actually figuring out the experience and the impact of the problem. In phase 1, you already identified the problem. Now you want to get the experience behind the problem and then explore the impact. So you want to dig into how long it's been an issue and what actually cost them. So you want to ask, what about your current setup makes it harder than it should be? Or has that been the case for a while or more of a recent thing? Or how is that impacting things? Is it slowing down projects, increasing costs, or creating bottlenecks between teams? And what this does is it ties the pain to time, money, or customer impact. And B2B, those are really the only 3 levels and levers that matter when getting a prospect to open up. In discovery phase number 3, you want to figure out the actual results. You want to gauge satisfaction and openness to change. With this, it's like, hey, besides that, would you say you're happy with how things are running right now? If they say yes, it's like, hey, okay, nice. What do you like most about it? Or, if you could change one thing about it, what would that be? If they say they're not happy, it's like, got it. What's been the main frustration? And how's that been recent? Or something you've learned just to work around? And what this does is it tests readiness to change, which is a key buying signal. One thing that I forgot to mention is this is obviously a very quick overview. But the biggest thing is you want to obviously probe. When someone says, they answer, oh, I like that it's, very affordable. It's like, affordable how? So the biggest thing is this is obviously a very baseline and quick YouTube video where I'm going over the framework. It only works as well as you probe. So you want to get the most information possible. Like if we're going back to this, it's like if they say miss handoffs, it's like, oh, okay, miss handoffs. Could you, kind of clarify what you mean by that? Or it's like, hey, how often does miss handoffs happen? So this frame only works as well as you probe it. And you want to probe as much possible and really go about this in a more curious tone, because the more information that you get, the more leverage you have in the conversation. So discovery phase number 4 is going to be both consequence and urgency. And with this is going to be the anchor into all the problems that you've figured out and you've built out in the discovery phase. So this is really what's going to stop people from saying, hey, man, I got to think about it. Or, let's touch base within, 3 months. You want to really create awareness of what happens if they don't do anything. Because people will see this as a huge problem, especially if you've built up a lot of problems in the beginning. So it's like, hey, man, if nothing changes and you're still kind of handling things this way from 6 months from now, what do you think this might cost the business, in time, revenue, or opportunity? And then from there, it's like, hey, is that something that actually concerns you, or more of a we'll figure it out later situation? This will really get prospect to take action And when you really do this properly and you handle the discovery phase properly, and then you hit them with the urgency question, this is going to anchor them into moving forward, not in buying this, obviously, but this is going to get them to hop on a demo for whatever it is that you're selling. And the purpose is to move them from, this is interesting to this is absolutely important. I need to get this fixed right now. And the key is to get the prospect to say this out loud, that number one, they have a problem. And number two, they can't afford in time, revenue, and opportunity to continue doing what they are doing. They need to take action right now. So you're building buying urgency through consequences, not pressure. You're not using external pressure. You're not saying, hey, man, this offer is limited time. You're not pushing them. You're getting them internally to figure out, hey, I can't be doing this anymore. I need to make this change as soon as possible. Now, once you figure out all the pain and you get them to agree that they need to make a change right now, only once you've done a 10 out of 10 job in discovery, this is when you actually quote unquote pitch. You're not really pitching, you're obviously just getting on a call, but this is where you give more value. So number 8 is going to be the value hook. And this is where you transition from the discovery, because obviously, this whole conversation has been to help you figure out problems, but this is where you're actually going to give the prospect value so they feel like they actually need to hop on the next call. So once you've exposed their pain and bridge it to how you'll actually help, you'll get into it. Got it. So just so you have context, really what we do is we help companies, insert benefit, organize workflows, reduce manual tasks, and speed up project delivery. And it's built to make your existing process faster and more reliable without heavy implementation. And obviously, this is just an example, but think of what your company is selling and insert whatever specifically makes it different into this value hook. For example, you want to personalize it too. Hey, man, since you did mention that you're dealing with, problems and inefficiencies with your marketing, our clients specifically use this feature to solve that exact issues. And what this purpose does is it plants the seed and you're positioning your system as the natural fix for the pain that they just admitted. Once you go through the value hook, you want to go to transition. And you always want permission to move forward. But the biggest thing is, you're not asking this permission at the beginning of the call. It's not like you're saying, hey, man, do I have 10 minutes of your time? It's like you've already built up this much pain and they now know that they need to move forward right now. So you're more just asking it as a courtesy because you already know the answer is yes. So it's like, hey, man, can I make a suggestion? And then you want to lead with a neutral tone. I'm not sure if this would be a full fit yet, but, if there's a simple way to, make your marketing systems more efficient without adding more complexity, would you be open to taking a quick look? Obviously, 99% of the time, they're going to say yes. Awesome. So what we do typically is we set up a short call with one of our advisors, and they'll actually walk you through how it would work for your business specifically. Would that be helpful? Of course, they're going to say yes. And the purpose of this is to keep control while making the transition collaborative, not pushy. Because once they said yes 2 times, then you got them more bought in and the show rate is going to increase. You want to go ahead and book them in and you want to confirm the authority. Before locking time, you want to confirm that you have the right decision makers. Hey, Mark, look, is there anyone else that you would need to join that call to make a decision or get input? If they say yes, okay, cool, perfect. Let's make sure they can join just so you don't have to re-explain everything. Can they make this time? And then do that. And then, biggest thing is you don't want to ask a prospect, hey, man, does this time work? It's like, look, at my calendar, looks like we got 4 p.m. or 6 p.m. available. Which one works better for you? So you want to finish strong. Great. When the invite comes through, can you accept it so I know it hit your calendar? This is a big thing too. A very small micro tweak is, especially if you're using, like a Google Calendar, for example, you want the prospect to click yes on the invite, just so it shows up on their calendar. Just so, if they're using Google Calendar and they're looking at it, it's actually going to show up on there, so that, the likelihood of them no showing is a lot lower. And you want to ensure that decision makers are present and increase show rates by having those micro confirmations. Now, once you book them in, you're going to do a pre-demo prep, and you want to get them committed to the content. So if you're selling a software or something a little bit more complex, or really anything in B2B, you should have a pre-call video or a pre-call demo. So with this, you want to send the pre-call video or resources that's really just going to prime them, because the last thing that you want is, you don't want a sales call to be an education call. You don't want them to say, hey, what it is that we do. You want the prospect to hop on these calls knowing exactly what it is that we do, exactly the type of people that we've helped, the types of results that we help. And really, they should only have just specific questions about, hey, can it do this and this and this? More specifics and what the price is going to be. But at the same time, you don't want to frame this as homework. You want to frame it as something helpful. So it's like, hey, look, before that call, the best thing that you can do is really just watch a short overview. It's going to explain how teams like yours are actually solving the inefficiencies in their marketing. And it's going to answer most of the common questions that you have. So the demo can actually focus on what matters to you specifically. Did you get this link? And then you can email it to them. You can shoot it over text, whatever you're doing. And the purpose is to warm them up. You want to improve the show rate and really frame your solution as a proven system before the closer or the account executive even joins the call. So you want to build a ton of value around watching this pre-call video, because essentially, if the closer shows up and they haven't watched a pre-call video, they're losing about 50% of the knowledge about what your company does and the results it's gotten. And that makes it a lot harder. But if the prospect shows up watching the video, they already know typically what happens. They're just looking for the price. This is going to increase show rate, and also increase close rate. So all of these things trickle down, and you want to make sure that your setters are doing these little things, these little micro things, because it does, in the end, it all adds up and it makes a big difference in your bottom line revenue. Last thing that you want to do is you want to set proper expectations, and you want to frame this very professionally, and you want to lock in micro commitments for the next step. Awesome, Mike. Before we hop off, really what I want to do is just make sure the next call is set up for success. Number one, watch that short video beforehand. Like I said, it's going to answer about 90% of your questions. It's going to make the demo just way more valuable, so that we can show you how we can actually help solve your company's marketing inefficiencies. Number two, we do run a tight schedule, so we want to make sure that you're on time. And then number three, like I said, please make sure, Bill, your business partner, is on the call, and then just join with your camera on. If it's a working session, or, you're driving, we don't want that. It's not just a quick call. This is something to where, we're going to share a screen, and we're going to, do a one-on-one with you. Does that sound good? What this does is it establish professionalism and ensures they take the demo seriously. Last thing that you want to do is you want to have a closer who's pitching when someone's driving, they have their camera off. The likelihood of you closing a deal if someone's driving is just not going to happen. And ultimately, you're just going to get a bunch of objections. So biggest thing is just, you want to frame this professionally, make sure people are showing up, watching the video, showing up with decision. Because like I said, you don't want a closer to pitch and then they say, oh, well, I have to talk to Bill about this. And then you're cooked. So in all, this is the summary, and this is the B2B summary flow, the B2B setter flow. Very simple. You got the intro, frame, system check, discovery, consequences, and then value hook, transition, book demo, and the prep. All very simple. And you don't want to be memorizing these things. It's really just a frame. And think of the frame like an iceberg. The more and more information and the lower you go on the iceberg, the deeper you should get with the prospect. So, yeah, this is essentially how we run our B2B setter call framework. I hope this is extremely valuable for you, and we will see you on the next call.